It's time to take a step beyond. The podcast to inspire creativity and imagination. Here's your host, Dr. Anthony Poston.
Thanks for tuning in to A Step Beyond. You know, today marks the 50th episode of this show, so it's kind of a monumental day for us. You know, as I've gotten older, I've kind of found myself moving towards the late Steve Jobs approach to life management. Meaning, since I believe that our mental energy on any given day is in fact finite, you know, we only have so much of it, I really don't focus much on what I would define as a mundane decision or those types of things that really aren't that critical in my life. Have you ever noticed that whenever you saw Steve speak, he was pretty much always wearing a black mock turtleneck and jeans? In fact, I had this vision of his closet, a mammoth closet. On one side, all black shirts, on the other side, all jeans. My point is, he obviously didn't waste mental energy each day on deciding what to wear. I kind of do the same thing, to the total dismay of my wife. I honestly don't give a lot of thought to what I wear or where I eat, which is why I tend to have lunch or dinner at the same places all the time. But this is also one of the reasons why I love my wife. She's a big foodie. And if she's out with me, she drags me to all kinds of new places I would have never gone to on my own. And to be completely honest, I totally appreciate the creativity, energy, and variety that the chefs and owners put into these places, as well as my wife's desire to want to experience them. Our guest today is a celebrity chef from Los Angeles. He's been given the title as the father of the gourmet food truck by the likes of the late Anthony Bourdain and Wolfgang Puck. His cookbook memoir, L.A. Son, was a New York Times bestseller in 2013. He was named to Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People list in 2016. In 2017, his restaurant Local received the first ever L.A. Times Restaurant of the Year award. And not only does he have a passion for both food and helping others in his community, he's going on to create some other great ventures and fantastic restaurants. Ladies and gentlemen, Chef Roy Choi. Roy, welcome to the show.
Hello. How you doing?
Hey.
That was a great intro. Thank you. I didn't know I did that. I didn't know I did that much.
Oh yeah, you've done a lot, my friend. So, hey, let's start with your beginnings here a little bit. You know, you were born in Seoul, Korea, and then moved to the U.S. when you were really young, I believe. And
yeah, you're 2 years old.
2 years old. Your father was South Korean, your mother North Korean, correct?
Yeah, but at that time they were just Korean.
They were just. That's right.
This was before the war, so it was all one country, and then it got split in half. So, yeah, so they were all Korean, and then by the time the war came, my mom's family migrated down south, running basically from the communists, and everyone ended up in the south, and then they cut the border off, and then the north became North Korea, and that was it.
Okay, so when your family came to the U.S., your family had a number of different businesses, including a restaurant. Talk about those for a second, what maybe you learned that has stayed with you during all these years.
Yeah, well, out here in California, there's a history of immigration, especially from Asia and Latin America and Mexico and South America. But a lot of the Asian immigration, whether from Southeast Asia or all the way up through Korea and China, is a lot of our folks come here with no money in their pocket and speaking a different language, you know. So, and especially in those early times, the first wave, there wasn't another set of immigrants to plug into. So they were kind of the pioneers in the sense of trying to figure it out. And so when you land here and you got nothing going on, you got to hustle. And you got to figure out how to survive. And so through that, what happens is you end up doing a lot of things, whether it's selling cosmetics, selling Amway, going door to door, working as a busboy. And then a lot of things end up happening where people open restaurants because it's just naturally, we're a food-based culture. And, you know, a lot of the skills maybe that you developed in your home country, you can't really execute here in America because of the language barrier and the cultural barrier. So people have a lot of confidence in opening restaurants because that's a way where you don't have to speak or figure things out. You just cook your food. So restaurants, liquor stores, dry cleaners, gas stations, mechanic shops. Those were a lot of first passageway entries for a lot of immigrants here.
And your parents, I believe, had a liquor store, a dry cleaner, a jewelry shop, and they had a Korean restaurant called the Silver Garden, correct?
Correct. Yeah,
And
I guess they tried to check off the whole immigration
the entire list. Yeah.
the entire list.
Yeah. So and you were making. I think I read where you were making dumplings at the age of 8 in this restaurant.
Yeah, I grew up in a liquor store and a restaurant, basically, and especially as I got into third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grade, I grew up in a restaurant doing homework on kitchen tables, after school, arriving, because right around the time that you would get out of school, I would arrive when the dumpling making was being made, because you open up for service, you sell out of all the dumplings, and then between 2 and 5, when you got to open back up for dinner, that's when you get back and start making dumplings or start restocking the refrigerator and things like that. So taking a break, and that's when I would arrive, and I'd sit down with all the older people and just make dumplings.
Yeah, well, hey, who would have thought back when you were 8 years old making dumplings that it would turn into what you're doing today? Speaking of which, I know you had kind of a rough childhood. You got involved with some bad crowds, and then your parents sent you off to a military academy. And then you went on to finish a BA in philosophy, and then you started law school, but then you realized it wasn't a good fit. So how does and then you went to culinary school. So how do you go from law school to culinary school?
I feel like in a way I'm on my 6th or 7th life. I've gone through all of these situations where I've gone to military school and then culinary school. Well, law school was I was trying to. So even though I got off kind of my path from time to time, and I continue to, having a strong kind of Asian Confucian core of being raised in a family network, no matter how far you go off, the family's always there. So it's there's this, not a burden, but there's this responsibility to the family. Because again, going back to what I said before, this is all we got. We came to this country, there was nothing for us. So really, at the end of the day, a lot of Asian families stick together. And for me, even though I was way far off, I would always try to come back and try to figure out how I can do right by my family. And so by the time I got to that early 20s, I was like, okay, let me try this. Let me try this one more time. So I went and got into law school, and I did everything I possibly could. And every single time I would confront it, I try to do what I can to maybe recorrect the path. But then I sat on my first day of law school, I sat in class, and I just knew it wasn't right. I felt like really a fish out of water. Everything was going over my head. I wasn't interested. I was almost getting angry inside, sitting in that classroom. The school that I was at was a Socratic method. So basically they just call on you out of nowhere. And I just didn't like it. I felt really claustrophobic. I felt really out of place. And I just, I don't know. I just walked out. It was like a movie. I just walked out and never came back. And then that sent me down a spiral. And then so from that spiral, at the other end of that spiral, which was about 3-4 years later, drinking, gambling, just getting into all kinds of trouble, I was on the couch watching The Essence of Emerald. And that was another kind of life awakening moment. And I just started to explore this world of food. I grew up around food. I was so comfortable around it. Finally at a stage where I could confront it. And I started researching what is this whole. I knew food, but I didn't know chefs. I didn't grow up around chefs, so I started researching what is this world with chefs and white coats and toques and all these things, And then so I went down that path, and I ended up in upstate New York at the Culinary Institute of America.
When you talk about your experience at law school, you just described about 2/3 of every college student in the country. About being a fish out of water and not liking it.
I have this philosophy that we almost like, how we are so strung up on our Bill of Rights. This thing was written 300 years ago, and yet we use it every time we want to defend our own argument on something. Each amendment, it's like same thing with the educational system. The system and the structure was built so long ago. But we're in such a different world right now, and I feel like we have to relook at our whole educational system, because there are a lot of folks and kids like me out there that just don't fit in, and they doesn't mean it's a mark on our intelligence or the way that we interpret the world or the way that we can contribute to the world. It's just that the system sometimes creates a lot of waste, which is a lot of kids that don't make it. And so I feel like we should relook at it and, really look at the vocational side of learning and teaching and more practical, because there's a lot of folks out there that can thrive and contribute to this earth and maybe solve a lot of problems, but maybe we need to educate them in a more practical way. Like if I had culinary access, or because as soon as I got to culinary school, it was like, it fit like a glove. I was now the student sitting in the front row, not the back row, and everything made sense, and I was thriving and I was doing well, and, but everything was hands-on. That's why it was almost vocational in the sense that I was connecting to it. And I think if we provided a lot more of that to a lot more youth, we would find a lot more success rate in this country.
Well, as an educator, I'll tell you, I agree with you 100%. And this is going to sound like heresy from an educator's perspective today, but I think we have oversold college in this country to the point where it's causing all kinds of other problems as well. I mean, too many kids just don't fit into the traditional system, and I agree. A lot of people need to be in a vocational skill and find something that they're actually passionate about and love doing every day, and then just let them do it. I mean, it's not about having a liberal arts education anymore, like it used to be. So I have a big question for you.
Last thing is, liberal arts are great, and college is great, but being educators, I think it's your responsibility and our responsibilities to evolve. And I just don't think the system has evolved with the times. Probably the content and the education and the teachers have evolved, but the structure hasn't evolved, and that's I believe the problem. But anyways. Well, that's a different podcast.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic. But I agree with you 100%. And speaking about evolution and evolving, so you've established yourself as a traditional chef. Maybe one day kind of trying to be a traditional chef. Seeking Michelin stars and everything else, and all of a sudden you pivot into a food truck. Now, talk about an evolution. How does that happen?
Well, that was life dealing me a new set of cards. I was on the path, so I did kind of find my path in life after all the ups and downs and different lives. And so basically from about my late 20s all the way through my late 30s, I was a professional. I had a job. I was moving up the ladder. I went from a property chef to a corporate chef to a regional chef, then a corporate chef, then a chef of the flagship of the Hilton brand in Beverly Hills. And then, my career, I was looking at the next stage of opening restaurants and going international. And there was no other bigger dream or fantasies or philosophies that I had at that time. I thought that I had found my path. And then 2008 came around, and I jumped companies to open this huge restaurant, and I failed, straight up. I failed. And I got fired, and the economy crashed, and I couldn't get another job, and I was really lost, And I'd been lost before, but I was younger, so it was cool when I was younger. But at this point, I was scared, man. I didn't know what to do. I had a family. I was a little bit older, and no one was like returning my calls, and I was really literally at the last step where I was considering really like going back to the beginning, like taking a huge pay cut, starting all the way back to like starting from the beginning again, almost like working on the line or starting as a sous chef. I never thought myself above that. I would do it at a drop of a hat, but I had to first exhaust all my options because I was now kind of like at the top of my field, so I had to like look at my comparable options first, but none of them were calling me back because like people like I was kind of overqualified, overpaid for what the economy was offering at this time. So in any case, like I was out there with nothing, and then my friend called me, and he was like, "Yo, let's sell these tacos in front of a club. I think it's going to kill." And I slept on it, and I was like, let's go for it. I think everything was meant to be honest, because if I had gotten a job, or if things were maybe a little bit brighter than they were, and they weren't as bleak, I probably wouldn't have said yes. But because there was nothing else, like, the idea of selling tacos on the street was like the most liberating thing that I could imagine at that moment. It actually freed me. And so then what happened from there was I just put everything I knew into these tacos, not only my culinary experience, but my life experience, and I saw it. It was one of the first times in my life where I truly got to see, like, the future. I truly saw exactly what I was meant to do. And, I thank my friend every day for that. Like, he, that phone call was the thing. And so, like, anyone listening to this, that these aren't fantasies. It's not just in the movies. Like, sometimes, like, one little thing, a phone call or a tap on the shoulder, or, bumping into a wall, or, a phone call, like a podcast, even this podcast, or even listening to my voice, or seeing something on TV. These things can truly, like, completely shift and change the whole trajectory of your life. You just have to be open to that moment. You have to be able to kind of see it and act upon it.
Well, your truck is it's called Kogi, right? And
yeah,
it's kind of a mix of Korean barbecue and a Mexican taco truck, kind of a combination there.
Yeah, but it's more just a representation and expression of L.A. And again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, the immigration of Los Angeles, what makes up Los Angeles, is a lot of people that come from Asia and Mexico and Central America. That's like the core of the population in Los Angeles. And so it's not really like a conscious decision to be like, okay, let's take Mexican food and Korean food and, let's make it into this new thing. It's not that. It was just, all right, let's really now cook from our heart and our soul. And then that just naturally came out to be, because we're from Koreatown. In Koreatown, it's mostly people from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Korea, and that's like the mix. And so, like, everywhere you go, whether it's a restaurant, a dentist's office, a doctor's office, a junior college, a library, a market, a liquor store, it's always Latinos and Koreans working side by side together. So it just became a natural expression, and it tastes like where we're from.
Well, to me, what made it unique, especially too, besides the food, is how you use Twitter to drive customers to it. In fact, Newsweek called it the first viral eatery, which I thought was kind of cool. And you were named one of the top 10 best new chefs in 2010 by Food and Wine magazine, which that makes you the first food truck operator to win that distinction, which is kind of cool. You have a great quote I read once that said, "What was made in a truck didn't have to taste like it was made in a truck." I love that quote, by the way.
Well, there were a lot of stereotypes about trucks at that time. So what we were doing was we were honoring the history of the trucks and the culture of what are called loncheros and taco trucks. We were honoring. I looked at us as like the children of those trucks. And what we were also saying was, like, let's break your stereotypes. We're going to honor but we're going to do something that completely makes you confront why you call these things roach coaches, or why you called them dirty, or why you had a certain perception of them. We're going to completely shatter all of that. And that's what we did. And we had the opportunity to do that because of technology and Twitter and the mobility of who we were, and just and the world was changing at that time. We were in a perfect storm. I don't know if maybe I can do something different at this point, but I don't know if that moment could ever be repeated, because people were losing their jobs. People were really scared and upset about what the government and the banking system had done to our lives. These phones that we have with us every day were just starting to come into existence, and social media was just being created. So it was this perfect storm.
Your movie. your story, your taco truck story, and the use of Twitter, etc., was kind of the inspiration behind Jon Favreau's movie Chef. Which, by the way, I love that movie. I thought it was great. You worked as a technical advisor to him, especially on the cooking and restaurant scenes. What was it like working with him on that project?
Yeah, it just started out as a job. My dog's barking, sorry, but
That's okay.
It just started out as a job, and then John and I really hit it. And so we ended up becoming best friends through the project, and I originally he just needed a technical advisor at the beginning. They were at the last stage and just right before filming. And so he just, almost like if you were going to do a dance movie and he had to go take dance classes or something, right?
Right.
And I was just going to be the teacher. But then the moment we met, we just hit it off. And so I just ended up being on set every day, and our relationship started building, and then he started sharing more with me and opening kind of more of his door to me and teaching me and learning from me, and we started just becoming great friends and almost like collaborators. And then all of a sudden, by the middle, like by the time I was supposed to quote unquote leave, we were just too thick in it, and he was just, I just ended up staying, and then we just ended up growing with each other, and then I just ended up becoming a part of the whole film, like the whole DNA and just a part of the family of the film, and it wasn't even like consciously meant to be that way. It was just one of those things. In a way, I guess it's like falling in love. In a way, you don't mean to. You don't mean to. You don't plan on it. You meet someone, and then all of a sudden, you guys are, you're together. You're just like hanging out, and you just become the best of friends. And that's what happened to John and I.
Well, it's a great movie, and I recommend all my listeners to watch that movie. It came out a couple of years ago. It's called Chef. Talk a bit about.
He did a great job.
Yeah, he
Go
did.
ahead, sorry.
Talk a bit about what let's transition to your local restaurant. LA Times named it the Restaurant of the Year in 2017. I mean, you were on a roll at that time when it came out. Talk about local for a minute.
Yeah, local is a project that it was started with a really, really wonderful chef, an amazing chef named Daniel Patterson. He's someone that I had admired and looked up to for a very long time. We were just 1 degree of separation away from each other for many years, many mutual friends and obviously colleagues, but we had never met. And then in 2013, I gave a speech in Copenhagen at a food conference. And I just kind of confronted all the chefs in the room about the idea of hunger and food access and what we could do, what we as chefs could do, almost as if you were to go to a teacher's conference or an educator's conference and you put the hard, cold facts of your profession in front of all of the educators' eyes and said, we may think that we're one thing, and we may convince ourselves that we are doing a great job, but here are the facts. And so I don't want to judge you, but I just want to show you these facts. And I want us to ask ourselves these questions. Are we really doing it, or are we just kind of like are we fooling ourselves in a sense? So like if you were to put up facts to show like graduation rates, acceptance rates, education rates, performance rates, and they were really in the gutter, not only compared to the rest of the world, but just spiritually within themselves in the gutter. And we all looked at them, and if we were in denial even after looking at them, then we would be in a lot of trouble. But by putting these facts and numbers up to a room of chefs, I just felt in my heart that they would really connect to it and they would know. And they did. They just looked at these and goes like, what the hell are we doing? Cooking all of these little tasting menus and focusing on our own egos. And so the first person that really stood up after that speech was Daniel Patterson. He had already been doing a lot of his own things in San Francisco, and he called me. He's like, man, your speech really kind of like galvanized a lot of thoughts in my mind and the things that I've been doing, and like, let's join forces and let's do something bigger. And so we joined forces instead of opening just a huge restaurant with with high check averages, we decided let's take that energy and do something specifically for the neighborhoods, for this idea of food access, and for this idea of opportunity and addressing hunger and the quality of food that goes to a lot of different neighborhoods in our country. So we started this project called Local, which was the idea of healthy fast food employed by the neighborhood, feeding the neighborhood, really looking at our science of cooking and how do we recreate these iconic flavors and dishes of a hamburger or a kind of a fried taco or a fried chicken nugget, and how do we look at these things but use grains and fermented oats and different vegetables and use the science to create the emulsification to get the mouthfeel. So that was really the idea of Local, the idea of science meeting this reality and this disparity in life and bringing those together through basically the recipe of love, and that's Local.
Well, I know we're kind of running low on time here, so let me transition to your current project, which is Best Friend, which just recently opened in Las Vegas. Talk about what kind of restaurant it is, what kind of vibe it has, what your influences are with that.
Man, Best Friend is the truth. It's the funnest place I've ever opened. It's right in the heart of the Las Vegas Strip. It's everything. It's the biggest thing biggest budgets I've ever had. It's the biggest stage that I've ever kind of had the opportunity to work on, and I brought everything with me back and brought it to Las Vegas, and then fell in love with a whole new city, and really, I don't know. I tried to create my own amusement park in a sense, So I looked at it in a way of kind of being Walt Disney, to be honest. Like how could, in this square foot space, how could I create an entryway where when people walk through this metaphorical turnstile, that they would feel like they were transported into Koreatown, Los Angeles, and all of the things that I grew up around, and all the things that we represent, and just making people smile and have fun. And you walk through a liquor store, so on a deep level, that represents again the immigration and the merchant shops and everything that we had to do to survive. But there are all these little Asian snacks and American snacks in there, and the bar is like the liquor store itself, and the host stand is the cashier station, and it's just like the place is just filled with all these like amazing visual cues. And so it's an Instagram dream. People love it. They love, everyone feels really comfortable in there. And then you walk through, and then the restaurant is kind of hidden through the back walk-in. You walk through, and it opens up to the restaurant with beautiful pictures of Los Angeles and murals from LA and big open kitchen. And the place is a Korean barbecue restaurant. So as soon as you walk through that kind of that transition, you walk into these smells of like sizzling hot platters of food coming around of the kitchen and different light patterns. And it's just an amazing place. It truly is an amusement park. It's an amusement park of smiles and togetherness and just, I don't know, fun and like celebration. And then the name Best Friend really lends itself to just people having fun with it, like I'm with my best friend, or this is my best friend, or you're my best friend. And so it's a really fun place, man. If I could, I'd love to take it around the world.
I look forward to visiting that place when I go to Vegas next time, because my wife and I we go to restaurants all over that town. So we're definitely going to go there our next time there. Listen, I know you have to go, so let me kind of end the show by asking this one question here. What you do requires a ton of creativity, no question about it. In fact, you've been quoted as saying that the creative process can feel like a spiritual experience. And, I agree. A chef today is truly an artist. What do you do to stay creative?
I just try to, pick up on different algorithms of stuff, and those things, inspire me. I don't take anything for granted, or I don't just the smallest of things. And like even when I go out to Des Moines next week, like something from that trip is going to affect me. Like I just try to pick up on the rhythms and everything going on wherever I am, and those things, like you through that whole haystack of stuff, if I can just get one thing, it's not necessarily even deliberate or on purpose. Like sometimes even if it's just one thing, like one little thing that comes out of it, that might influence a whole concept or a whole idea or a whole new project, so.
Well, I would love to say that. I would love to say, that you coming out to Des Moines was part of the inspiration for your next restaurants. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you taking some time with me, and thank all of you for listening and taking a step beyond with us. Like I've said before, starting a business isn't easy, and making it successful is even harder. It's a huge risk, and it takes guts. Roy didn't do this for the money or to just be successful, though. He did it because he loves it, and it allows him to showcase his imagination and his creative best. Roy's success is a byproduct, one of knowing he doesn't have all the answers, along with his willingness to be humble, listen, and learn from others who have already paved the way. I hope you'll continue to listen to A Step Beyond and become inspired to be the very best version of yourself. I'm your host, Anthony Poston. Call you.
Thanks for listening to A Step Beyond. Take a moment, if you would, and leave a review on iTunes and share the podcast with those who need to be inspired to become more creative and imaginative in everything they do.